Tips with Toni. Tips with Toni. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Toni. Tips with Toni. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Toni. Woo.
Hello and welcome to the Tips with Toni podcast. I'm Toni Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I'm so excited for you guys to hear this interview. It's with a good friend of mine. His name is Dezi, also a registered dietitian, and he specializes in helping dads literally just be the best dad ever, using nutrition and exercise as their foundation. If that's not aligned with kind of what I do, I don't know what is. Anyways, it's a really, really awesome episode. We talk all about mental health, physical health, really kind of stepping up the bar. And even if you feel like you're not being the best dad right now, like you can change that. So I don't want to talk too much about it. I want you guys to hear it for yourself. So without further ado, here is the interview with Dezi Abeyta, registered dietitian. Hi, Dezi. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be on this podcast with you and obviously to see your face. You're a good friend and I'm excited.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have you here. So we're going to just jump right in because I do have to just shout you out for having a TED Talk. And that's something that I actually haven't really told my followers. I kind of let them know, but I'm in the process really setting out applications. But you really inspired me to get the ball rolling, and your TED Talk is absolutely incredible. So I think that we should probably just start with that because I feel like that TED Talk explains who you are and so much what you're about. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So you want to know what prompted me to do it or just in general?
Yeah, definitely tell everyone who you are, what you do, why you do what you do. But I feel like it's going to all intertwine of why you created this TED Talk and all of that.
Yeah, so I have always, as I was growing up, I've always wanted to do really big things. And it wasn't so much that I wanted to be affirmed by what I did. I just wanted to feel, it's kind of like that classic example of when you see your sports idols carry the proverbial trophy. I wanted to in my life carry the trophy. And so I think with the TED Talk, it was one of those moments where I, was able to walk off the stage carrying a really big trophy that even when I talk about it now, ear to ear, this, my smile is huge because it was so amazing to me. And it's ingrained with a lot of my process because I tell people I'm a proud husband, proud father, and then we'll dive into I'm a proud dietitian. I'm a proud person who likes to really motivate dads to be better men, to be better fathers, and just better all around people. So when I first examined the idea around the TED Talk, it really had a lot to do with my inability and my lack of qualifications to be a dad. Because I think when I had first started, I didn't know how to feed my daughter. And that was really what prompted me to start searching and start doing research on how to do it. So, the premise of the talk, just to give you you and your audience a Cliff Note version of it, is that what I did was I took my experience of not being able to feed my daughter with what was happening on my side. And for me, I was really forcing the situation, forcing her to try to take the bottle. And it just wasn't working for any of us. Both of us would end up crying at the end of the session. So it wasn't fun. So I took that parallel and took it to what we see, as dietitians, especially when we're trying to help people develop their relationship with food. I paralleled the two experiences with what we see in diet culture. And it was really nice to be able to talk a little bit about not only my experience as a clinician and as a dietitian, but also paralleling that with my role as a dad and how important it is to be more empathic towards the process. So for me, it was one of those moments where I felt really good about it and I got to teach, which to me, that's everything that I want.
Yeah, it's so awesome. And it was just thank you for your vulnerability and being open about it. It's I think you even said in the talk, here I am a dietitian and I can't feed my daughter.
Yeah.
Really big. I feel not a lot of people speak to that and nobody really talks about how, some kids they won't, we encourage breastfeeding and they won't go to the breast, or we encourage like all these healthy foods, but the kid won't eat it no matter which form you put it in. Like, it's just this is the recommendation, but application is always like the key, and it's not always what you assume it to be. So definitely what is the name of the TED Talk so people can go look it up?
So it's Food Fights Will Save Your Life.
Food Fights Will Save Your Life. I love that so much, because through that process, it probably brought you closer to your wife as well. Would you say, or was
absolutely? I think I have really lucked out. A lot of my messaging now, where I'm trying to really empower men and empower dads, comes from my wife. Like, I would love to put her on blast and to put her in a lot of these situations, but she's such an introvert that she's like, no, you go ahead and do this for me. I don't want to do this. But so we fell in love working in eating disorders together. So she was an eating disorder therapist and I was like the eating disorder dietitian. And so that's where we first met, and that's where we first became friends, and then obviously fell in love, and the story was written from there. But we always try to take that process of teaching people how to not only just engage and enjoy with their bodies, but also to develop a relationship with food. And it's something that we have been really serious about taking into our relationship with our daughter, because I think what was a really vulnerable experience for me was that at the time, my wife had to go back to work after 3 months. It was kind of me and my daughter working through the feeding process. And I don't know how your audience feels for those that are parents or not, or want to be parents. But I come to find that parenting is such a vulnerable experience, and that you do all that you can, but you don't know everything. And a lot of things come up, whether or not, your parents were imperfect or not, but it's a vulnerable process. And especially coming from my perspective, where I was taught, like, from a male figure that, you're supposed to know the answer. You're supposed to take care of your family. You're supposed to provide all those things. And the more that I'm doing this, the more that I'm finding that it's like, I need a teammate throughout this process, and I don't know everything. And sometimes it's really shameful to come to that realization, because it's vulnerable and it sucks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but like it's not that you can't do it alone. It's just a lot easier when you have someone that you can depend on, that supports you and that understands you, because it's hard. Like you said, being a parent is hard. So I can't imagine being a single parent, which I'm sure there's, you probably help a lot of people through that, but it's a lot. And there's even if there's books on it, you could read all the books in the world. People can't really teach you. I think it's like entrepreneurship, right? It's like you could read and listen to all the personal developments in the world, but all the personal development books in the world. But until you really go and step out and do it, and like have your own business and all that, it's really kind of, you learn as you go, and you're not going to be perfect. And it's the failing though that gives you the feedback to know what to do better next time.
Yeah. Which I think is huge. And, talking about entrepreneurship, I mean, that's a really vulnerable process in itself. And you and I have had really great conversations about that. And I think the way that we take care of ourselves through the process really shines a light on things that you need to work on. And I tend to find that whether it's entrepreneurship or parenting or anything else, that putting yourself out there and admitting that you might not know all the answers, but you need help, I think is huge, because I know that's been really apparent in my life. And it's been really important to find connection and not to do this alone. Whether it's a team or a partner or whatever that is, it's always been really huge in my life.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. So speak a little bit more about you've started a movement. So the TED Talk was something that happened in the past, right? And that it's giving you this confidence to create your own business, and you're doing all these other amazing things. But like, what's the movement now? What's your mission now?
I just got asked that earlier today, and I was like, oh my gosh, if you ask me, like, what's your mission? Like, what are you doing? The thing that I love doing is empowering men and empowering dads to share their vulnerabilities. And always for me, like, food is always going to be the vehicle. So being able to empower dads to prioritize their health in a way where they can be good health role models for their children and for their families. And that's really what I'm set out to do at this point. Because when I first became a father, and this was a huge reason why I started to explore and why the TED Talk came to be, because I didn't feel like there was a whole lot of resources for dads. I saw like a million resources for moms, mommy blogs, like everything like that. But there wasn't really anything for dads to talk about like, hey, what do you do in the first 6 months to a year when the baby really is just needs more breast milk and you're kind of just there to help? Like, how do you find purpose in that? And then when they become a year and they start molding these really important attachments, like how do you make sure that you're part of the process? And then, so like things like that. It was one of those things where I just thought that for dads, the resources were severely lacking. And so right now I'm at a point where I'm not only just trying to empower them to eat better, obviously, and to treat their bodies better, but to really prioritize their health in a way where they can be good health role models.
Yeah. So let's speak a little bit more about that. Like, what have you, like, can you maybe give an example of the difference of somebody who has their nutrition under control versus someone who doesn't, and the difference in how that reflects in their parenting?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about my process, just more so personal experience. And Toni, you've heard this like really vulnerable story of mine, so I'm so glad to be able to share this with you and your audience, because I think it's something that it's very likely that someone else out there is going to really resonate with this story. And so when I first became a dad, it was a really vulnerable process for me. At the time, I was kind of in between career fields and not really knowing what I wanted, but again, really wanting to hold that like proverbial championship trophy in some type of way, but I didn't know how to search for that. So in the first year of parenting, it was really different for me because I was working like 60, 80-hour work weeks, just trying to provide for my family, thinking like, okay, like at the time, like we're in this apartment, I want them to have a house. Like, how do I do this? And I ended up running myself into the ground. I think probably until about a year ago, I really didn't start taking a look at my health and taking a look at my role as a healthy role model. And, over the past 2 years, so I've been a dad for about 3 years. So in year one into almost year one and a half, I was not treating my body with respect. I think that the way that I was handling stress was just having a couple beers like every night, just really not connecting with my wife, my child, and just worried about like, how are they going to be okay? Until I came to this moment where like I even thought about a couple times like taking my own life, which was huge. Like it wasn't anything that I was ever taught, but like the fact that I went to that length to be like, man, I don't have what it takes to do this. I had this realization where I was like, oh my gosh, what if I just started to practice some more self-love and self-compassion for myself throughout this process, and started to reach out, started to educate myself and started to really center what I'm doing around my family connection. And it was really nice the way that things work out, because when I started changing that mindset, I stumbled into this like branding opportunity where I got to talk a little bit more about my experience as a dad and also my experience as a dietitian and food expert, which sort of prompted me to do the TED Talk, which propelled me into doing more things. And for me, like when someone asks me like, what's the mission? Like the mission is that, and at the same time, it holds me accountable. It holds me to a certain standard where I'm like, if I'm telling people to practice this, like I better be doing the same damn thing, because I seek to be authentic in the things that I do. And it's a huge value system of mine. If I'm trying to leave a legacy for my family to be a better health role model, I better follow suit with what I'm trying to teach. And so the last 3 years have been monumental. And I'm sure you might have heard, or your audience might have heard, like, hey, parenting changes your life. I would definitely agree in my case, because it's absolutely saved my life.
Wow. That's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I think like the best part about what you just said is you use the word self-love and self-compassion coming out of a male's mouth. And I feel like that's so sad that you don't ever hear men speak that way. And you're not any different than females. Like we need to show ourselves love.
Yeah.
We have to do it. And I love that the more that you practice that, maybe update us now. Like, I know you were at a very high stress job. You're working all these hours. You were distant from your wife. You were, had all these insecurities. You were feeling really low. to the point of wanting to take your life. That's a very low place to be.
Yeah.
But yet you somehow pulled yourself out of it. And like, what are you doing now? Like, give us like a little bit more specifics. Like, are you still working these crazy hours? Like, what is part of your self-care, self-love process, your nutrition, all of those things?
Absolutely. So I think just within the process of starting to put these things out, whether or not you want to call it the universe or God or whatever that is for someone, but for me, it started to change my mindset around, okay, like how do I want to interact? And so the thing that really stuck to me was like me not sleeping. So I started doing more research on like how important, is sleep. And in the process, I ended up getting a really great job with Major League Baseball as a consulting sports dietitian. So even then I was teaching athletes about the importance of sleep and then the importance of active recovery. And so I started thinking a little bit more about my nutrition and how that interacts with my family life. And so now that I'm consulting with Major League Baseball and then also having my online nutrition and coaching business, my hours of working are usually probably kind of depending on the week, but like 40 to 50 hours a week. But I'm much more energy efficient with the way that I spend my time. And I think it has a lot to do with me scheduling my, I call it like my self-care time. So every day I have like a family breakfast in my work schedule that doesn't get touched. Yeah, every day I know, right? I have a family lunchtime that doesn't get touched. I don't do it perfectly. I don't work out every day, but I'll make sure that I set the intention of getting my butt to bed at a certain time. So you'll even see in my schedule too that it's like screens away, go connect. Like it's a good reminder by 9:00. So by that time, I have my phone in my office so that I can go connect with my wife or put my little girl down. So for me, the transformation into what I'm doing now has really allowed me to be more energy efficient and much more lively about life. I mean, it's cliche to say, but I think at the end of the day, my self-care has a lot to do with me prioritizing my sleep, which provides me with an ample amount of energy to make sure that I am able to have energy to spend time with my family, to go exercise, to make sure that I do any type of meal prep that I need. And it also goes back to like mental health too, because I don't think that a lot of men are comfortable with talking about that. And I know that from personal experience from just my life, but also too, like the men that I work with now where it's, we'll talk about food, but a lot of this has to do with mental health and the vulnerability of that process and being able to share oftentimes what's painful and oftentimes what we weren't programmed to be able to be comfortable with.
Yeah. I know just before we got on, you were saying how you went on your story yesterday and you talked about loneliness and all the responses you got.
Yeah.
Like, tell us more about that. What was it exactly you were talking about with loneliness? And I also just want to highlight the fact that 6 people messaged you. So therefore we're all feeling lonely. So to feel alone, you just have to remember you are not alone. But anyway, go off of that. Like, what was that about?
Yeah. So I started talking about, because I've been doing a lot of work with trying to navigate, like, what are the men that I'm trying to speak to, I sort of counter it towards like the millennial men. What are some of the issues that come about, and just jumping on phone calls and things like that. The thing that I've continually found and just heard of was that men feel heavily disconnected. Either they're overworked, overstressed. They don't really know their spouse. They don't really have time to play with their kids. They're really tired. And the thing that it came to was like disconnect. And there's a really great author. So she's a shame researcher. Her name is Brené Brown, and she's just monumental in a lot of the mental health field. And so she has a book called Dare to Lead. And I was actually listening to the audio the other day, and she talked about how when we use the term disconnection, it's such a dumbed down term because what we need to really use is loneliness. So I was like, oh my gosh, that can definitely resonate with what I'm hearing. And even in my own life too, because at the time when I was really struggling, I have a really great family. I have 3 brothers and a sister that I love, that we're really connected to, that we're all in different places now. But at the same time, like, I didn't choose to reach out. And so I did feel a lot of loneliness. So yesterday on my stories, I had just talked a little bit about, hey, men, do you feel lonely? Because this process is really vulnerable. So do you have a team around you? Do you have a bunch of people who are willing to hear a lot about maybe what you might be struggling with? And it's not even just about health, but it's also mental health too, because I mean, the stats are there. Like, people are struggling with this loneliness aspect and are taking their lives. And there's a lot of mental health things that are coming up. And so I just spoke a little bit about that. And it was really healing, because the one thing that I love about men, and the one frustrating thing about men, is that I love how connected they want to be, but I hate how they don't reach out, and I hate how they don't engage. Because if I ask that story and I put it in a survey, you're not going to get, and I saw this yesterday too. I didn't get anyone who engaged besides women. They're like, oh my gosh, this resonates. I know someone like this. But the men actually DM me. And I just thought that was really interesting too. And it really speaks to what we're seeing and what I'm seeing with a lot of the work that I'm doing and trying to motivate men to reach out more, because it's a vulnerable process. And we all know that sharing is disarming, right? So it's a struggle to see other men struggle with that, because there are resources out there that, especially considering what I'm doing too, like, hey, like, I want you to be seen. I see you and I want to get to know you.
I love that. I love that so much. Wow. So, I mean, what you do is so helpful and so powerful. I'm really excited, because I do feel like you are starting a movement, and it's going to definitely take off. So I'm excited to watch that happen, because it's well needed. I think the biggest question a lot of people ask is like, how do I get my kids to eat healthy? How do I ensure that, I am doing all that I can be doing for them? Like, what would you say to that?
I really try to point it back to the parent's role, and it's something that I really try to motivate and empower, because the kids are, especially with children, like, they're learning their world. They're if anyone's ever hung around with the kid before and cussed on accident, the kid repeats that like they're a sponge. It's what happens. So what I try to do is really empower parents, like if it's picky eating or if it's some food issues, of just really making sure that they're prioritizing that time to sit down free from distraction and to model healthy behavior. And it's exactly what we do, like in the eating disorder field too. Like, if you sit down with a client, you're trying to model healthy behavior. So you're not making comments about your body or making comments about like why I shouldn't eat these carbs, or making comments about things like that, but you're helping them to connect. And it's something that I actually really love to do with my daughter. I was actually just having a conversation earlier about this, but my wife and I really love to do a couple things at the dinner table. And that is, instead of like saying our prayers, like, we say gratitudes. And we'll go around, like, we'll ask our daughter, like, what are you thankful for? And then we'll tell her what we're thankful for.
What is she thankful for? I need to know. What did she say? She's 3.
She'll go through the gamut of like the 70 family members that we have. She'll go through like, I miss my Uncle Anthony. I miss my Uncle David. I miss my cousins. Like, I miss my Nana. And she'll like my like everything.
Oh my God.
So she'll go through that, or she'll say things like, I'm thankful for, so she calls like breast milk, like milky, she calls them monies. So she'll say, I'm thankful for monies.
I love that.
Yeah. So we'll do that. And then we'll also ask like, how are you brave, or how did you fail today? Which is always like really interesting to hear her take, her 3-year-old take on things like that. And it points back to like, Toni, just making sure that you're providing like healthy examples of how you can interact with food in a healthier way versus what we oftentimes see, especially in diet culture, which is like what you should be eating, what you should look like, why I should lose weight. And to me, like when those messages get seen, whether or not they're verbal or nonverbal, like kids are watching. And that's something that I try to empower parents to make sure that they're aware of their own behaviors. And that has everything to do with food as well.
100%. If you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're complaining, oh my God, I can't believe how big I am, or, oh, I need to lose weight. Or even if your partner says to you, like, babe, that beer belly, like your kids are watching that. Your kids are seeing that. And I think that's really important, that you have to lead by example. And that's the best way to get your kids to be who you want them to be.
Yeah.
Be that person.
It's super important. And I think it's something that really gets left behind, because it's like, we actually had a really great conversation about this in Costa Mesa a while ago. When you have a kid that you're working with from a nutrition perspective, it's always a family intervention. It's never just the kid. It's always a family intervention, because it's a family system and it's a team effort. And that's one thing that I like to do as well with my guys, where I'm not only just empowering them with their role, but I'm also like inviting the spouse on the call from time to time. You're like, hey, tell me a little bit about how things are going. Like, what do you all need from a support standpoint? Because I think those things are really huge.
I love that. They're very much needed for sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. So, okay. So I always like to ask anybody that I have on if they want to give an example of like one of your clients of like how his situation was before you started working with him, what you did together, and like how he is now, kind of like that transformation. I'd love for you to kind of speak about that.
Yeah. So it's been really nice because a lot of how I do my messaging is like men of purpose, but I've actually had I have some women now, some rock star women who are in my program who are just so behind the movement of being good role models. And so like every single one of them have like see themselves as great role models. But one in particular is like, they're all like high level performers. And one in particular is a high level performer in the military. And he came to me wanting to just learn how to obviously make sure that he had better like family and work-life balance, and also improving his body composition. But as we got deeper, he just asked me like, guys, like, just teach me to be a better dad. Just teach me to be a better person. I'm noticing that I don't have the mental or emotional energy to give to my very vibrant family and my children. And it bothers me, and it's been happening. I'm losing sleep over it, and I'm just not okay. And the real transformation has been over the past 3 months was really just having him connect and practice more vulnerability through the process of learning. And one of the things that I have really enjoyed watching him do was to provide the education for him and for nutrition, and to have him teach his girls not only like how to cook, but just a little bit more background on the nutrition. And the other day, he had called me and he's like, you're never going to guess what I'm looking at. And I was like, what? And he's like, my girls are just like racing around the yard and inviting me to come be active with them. And they use the term, Daddy, come be active with us. And I just got emotional because I was like, man, like, I think overall when you're trying to be a good role model, it feels really good to have your kids look at you in a way where it's like, you're not working too hard, where you're not here, but it's like, come be with us. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just like really huge. And to see my client express joy about it felt really good. And by default, you know, we're able to change his body composition too. So it's not, and you know this, Toni, like it's not always
body.
It's not about the body. It's about so much else. Like I always tell my guys, like, hey, I totally understand that you want to lose weight. What we are going to try to lose is the weight of desperation, is the weight of working too much, being overworked, the weight of stress. Like that's the weight that I want to help you lose. And then the other weight will happen. Totally. This is what happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, the transformation for me, just observing it, was like, oh my gosh, like I'm helping someone to find their why and their purpose again.
Yeah. And wow. And connect. I think the biggest word that keeps coming up is connection. Connection with yourself, connection with your spouse, connection with your children, connection with your purpose. I think those are all really, really huge.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Dezi. This has been amazing.
Is it cool for people to cry on your podcast?
Yeah, no, I love that because you have a good heart, you know, and you can tell it comes through. You know, and I think that I appreciate you being you. Authenticity is special.
That's why we connect, my friend.
Yes. So anything else you want to add before we talk about like where people can find you and stuff like that?
No, I mean, I think the movement, Toni, that you are starting is huge. I love your TED Talk idea. I'm so excited to see it come to fruition. It is so creative and it is so you. So for your listeners who haven't heard you talk about this, you need to talk about this more.
I know. I'm just nervous because the application process is not easy. like I could be applying for years and it never get called. Yeah.
And at the same time, like we know this, like the more that we put this out, the more that it's going to come to fruition because that's how things operate. So I don't want to touch on anything except like, I believe in you. Like, talk about this more. Your idea is freaking fire. And we've talked about that.
Thank you. We should do like a live together about relationships, because my TED Talk is related to dieting and relationships. And you kind of talked about like, we should do something together. That would be cool.
So I actually, this kind of ties into like where people can find me, right? So I've actually been doing expert live Q&As in my Men of Purpose online nutrition coaching with Dezi Facebook group. So men, if you're out there and you need some guidance, you need a team, you need people to talk a little bit more about what it means to be a man of purpose and also woman of purpose, please, that's where you can find me. But I've actually been doing joint lives with people, and I would love to have you in there. That would be amazing.
Oh my God, I would love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, we're doing the series as like purpose chats. So yeah, we're talking about some nutrition, but we're also talking about, and I always have to bring the dad out of things. So I'm always asking people whether or not they're a dad, but maybe talking a little bit about their dad and what that meant for their health, whether or not they were a great role model or a role model that made them do what they do. Because I love my dad, but I do what I do because my dad didn't take care of himself early on. So I constantly have that on my mind, on my heart.
Yeah, that's huge. Wow, I love that so much. I would love to talk. I would love to go in your Facebook group and talk.
Please do. September.
Okay, let's plan it. In the meantime, so your Facebook group is Men of Purpose?
Men of Purpose, yeah. Online nutrition coaching with Dezi.
And then your Instagram handle?
Instagram handle is Fit Dads Coach. Obviously empowering men to be great health role models for their family. And that's my mission. That's my message.
I love that.
So I'm constantly trying to empower guys. And
then you do one-on-one coaching as well, right?
Yeah. So
virtual coaching, correct?
Yeah. So my online nutrition coaching business, obviously I do a lot of my messaging and marketing through a lot of the social networks. But yeah, so I'm always looking for men of purpose that want to get some help around just being good health role models, not only just for themselves, but also for their families too. So I'm always trying to make sure that I'm finding the right type of people. So yeah.
Love it. Awesome. All right. So I always put the Instagram handle link in the show notes. So I'll do that. Yeah, I mean, this has been great. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely chat soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Another amazing interview. I actually think I love interviewing more than you guys like hearing them, honestly. There's just so many amazing people we've had on the podcast so far, and Dezi obviously did not disappoint. If you guys enjoyed the episode, please screenshot it, share it on your story, tag me, tag him. Let us know what resonated with you. Send us a message. It really, really helps us. We like to know that we are providing value and that you're interested and you're enjoying it. And it really, really just gives us that kind of motivation to keep going, keep doing what we do. If you have not subscribed to the Tips with Toni's podcast, please subscribe. It will let you know every time a new episode comes out, which is every Monday and every Wednesday. And if you could leave a 5-star rating, that would be awesome. And then if you want to give an extra 10 seconds and put a positive review, that would be even better. It allows other people to hear the podcast and get this message spreading of helping you get healthy one bite at a time. Thank you guys so much for listening. As always, I'm Toni Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.